Right there, John. You will help me out here, right?
We read that already.
You're on.
Right. Good evening and welcome to the regular meeting of the Brisbane Planning Commission, Thursday, December 12th, 2013 at approximately 7:30 p.m. Sorry we're a little late, but babies kind of dictate sometimes.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Okay. Call to order.
Commissioner Cunningham,
I am present.
Commissioner Munir,
Here.
Commissioner Reinhardt.
Present.
The record show Commissioner Doe and Parker are absent.
The adoption of the agenda for this evening.
I make a motion to adopt the agenda for this evening.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oral communications. Oral communications is for anybody in the audience to speak on any matter that is not on this evening's agenda. Is there anybody who would like to speak? I do not see anybody in the audience who would like to speak on anything that is not on the agenda, so I'll make a motion to close the oral communications.
I don't think you need the motion.
Okay, we're closing.
Yeah.
We're closing oral communications. Okay, written communications. We have two things in written communications. The first one is an appeal of the Planning Commission's regarding 8 Thomas, APN 007350340, the November 14th, 2013 Planning Commission meeting, wherein all commissioners approved that this go forward. There is an appeal to the City Council objecting to our decision, and that will probably come up early next year. That appeal is by Terry O'Connell and Ray Miller. The second piece of, we have a letter regarding this evening's 8 San Diego Court, and that is from Stores Horn and Beth Grossman. We'll enter that into the record as well. First thing on our agenda is item F, new business, public hearing for 515 Tunnel Avenue, a use permit UP-6-13, temporary Christmas tree storage for recycling. Brad Durda, Recology Properties Incorporated, is the applicant. Sanitary Fill Company, owner, assessors parcel 005-152-350. Stuff?
Yes, thank you. Recology proposes to temporarily store Christmas trees for recycling within a 90 by 100 foot area on the south side of 515 Tunnel Avenue, or south side of Tunnel Avenue. Discarded trees will be collected in San Francisco from December 20th through January 31st, temporarily stored on site on a concrete pad, and then reloaded for chipping at Recology's recovery facility just over the border in San Francisco. The chip materials will then be used for energy production at an off-site biomass facility rather than being landfilled. In order to approve the use permit, the Planning Commission must determine whether the proposal is consistent with the general plan and whether it or not it will be detrimental to the health, safety, morals, comfort, general welfare of those either working or residing in the neighborhood. And it would just be working in the neighborhood in this case. Also, whether it would be detrimental to the improvements in the neighborhood or the general welfare of the city. The proposed use meets these findings as detailed in the agenda report. If approved, this would be the 6th year for this use, and there have been no changes since last year. Conditions of approval have been carried forward from the previous years, and there's been nothing added to that, no further comments from the various departments. In closing, staff recommends conditional approval of use permit UP 613 per the agenda report containing the resolution via the resolution containing findings and conditions of approval.
Thank you. Any comments?
No comments.
Well, the only comments I have is I've been, it's been how many years now? 4 or 5 years?
6?
6 years. And I have all along went along with this proposal. I think it's a very good thing to do because what they're doing is recycling it for energy purposes. And it's a better use than citizens throwing it on the side of the sidewalk. So I really appreciate what they're doing. And one thing I still don't understand is that Recology is within the Brisbane territory, but we still have to go to the South San Francisco scavenger for trash, and that may be a different issue. But it's always bothers me when I go by the tunnel road and I see there's part of us, and yet they are not part of us. So that's something that we have no control. But as far as this proposal goes, I think I've seen it in the past that all the conditions are pretty much the same. Mm-hmm. And applicant has done a very good job. I haven't heard any criticism from any of the neighborhoods. So that's my take on this, that I think there should be given the permission to go ahead and store it.
Oh, well, I guess I will add, I always look forward to the scent of the trees as I drive down 101. Yeah.
As opposed to?
As opposed to, the other, scents that come from that area.
So, Dave, you have any other comments?
No, I've supported the last couple of years and look forward to seeing them.
I think initially when we looked at that, we did made a lot of recommendations, and I think over the years they all been
satisfied.
Satisfied. And the fire department, I think they are pretty, they have no serious problem with this either. So I don't see any reason for not to grant it.
Okay. I have a question for staff. I think I asked this question at the same time last year. Why are we bringing this back every single year for exactly the same request?
This falls into the category of a temporary use, which can only be approved for a short duration of time, which wouldn't carry them forward from year to year. So.
Okay. So this is, we have to do this because of the rules. Okay.
Can it be done at the staff level? No.
Not per current zoning code.
Yeah.
Just you might want to open the public hearing, and I don't know if...
Okay.
We like having you come down. It's good to see you every year.
Okay, so I then open the public hearing to hear any comments regarding this. Please come forward. Sure.
Thank you. Brad Darler, College San Francisco. Come every Christmas to thank you for letting us store the huge surge of Christmas trees that on the 26th and on, they start to show up on the sidewalk, and we pick them up and bring them down there. And we can only chip them so fast, so we have to store them for a little while until we can get through the chipping backlog. But you're right, it is a holiday tradition to smell the Christmas trees, and I think it's good for everyone. So,
for the people who might be listening to this meeting who don't understand what is actually entailed here, could you please explain for the people who might be listening at home what we're doing, why we do it, why you do it, I should say, and what that means in the long run to Christmas trees that might otherwise be a problem?
Well, we're completely committed to managing waste resources in ways that avoid pure wasting at landfill, and in ways that hopefully have a higher value, higher use down the road. Christmas trees are actually, they're about 500 tons a year, in San Francisco that people buy and display and eventually have to get rid of. And by getting rid of them, they typically carry them down the stairs or throw them out the window. Either way, they end up on the sidewalk and all over the city. And as you probably know, the less time they lay on the sidewalk, the less chance it is that they might catch on fire or end up tossed or heaved somewhere. So it's a bit of a public safety issue. So we're pretty enthusiastic about once they start hitting the street, driving around and picking them up. And there is a value. They're clean. When we bring them back to 515 Tunnel for storage, we have to make sure that they don't have stands, ornaments, lights. All those things are removed. We end up with a Christmas debris, I suppose you could call it. And then the trees, the pure Christmas trees, are ground and to a very fine kind of mulch, I guess you'd say, and burned at a plant that generates steam to make electricity. So, I don't know. I suppose you could argue whether or not Christmas trees are, worth all the effort, but they do bring a lot of symbolic joy to people, I think, and I know my children enjoy them very much, and I kind of look at it as like gigantic rough broccoli, sort of an agricultural product that's, reusable in a sustainable kind of way, and you don't have to look at it that way, but I tend to look at it like that. It's maybe an impact that's worth absorbing, but we manage it. We have to manage it. Maybe someday we'll find a better use for it. Energy is not the best use for something like this, but for now, we do a lot of composting, and this isn't really suitable for that. We've learned, but for now, that's the story.
Okay, just a quick question. You said they're not suitable for composting, just as an educational...
Well, I guess the question is why, and my understanding is that, the scent that makes them so distinctive is more or less a toxic sort of anti-insect kind of thing, and it just is not desirable for sensitive tomato shoots or whatever the compost is going to be used for. That's my understanding, but I'm not an expert on that topic.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
No, that's great.
Any questions?
Thanks, Brad.
All right, thanks very much.
Thank you.
All right. What is the pleasure of the planning commission?
I can make the motion to approve the use permit UP 6-13.
Motion to close the public hearing first.
Oh, yeah.
Motion
A
to
motion
close
to
the
close the public hearing.
Right. All in favor?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second that.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Okay. I make a motion to approve the use permit UP-6-13.
I second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries.
Okay, moving on to new business F, item 2, public hearing on 8 San Diego Court, design permit DP-3-13, grading permit EX-2-13, design and grading permits for development of approximately 3,598 square foot single-family residence and associated grading of approximately 306 cubic yards on parcel C of a 3-lot subdivision approved through density transfer within the RBA Brisbane Acres zoning district. Jim Trotter, applicant. Kieran Woods, owner. Assesses parcel number 007-554-060. Staff, please.
Yes. A single-family home of just under 3,600 square feet is proposed to be built on a 5,000 square foot parcel at 8 San Diego Court. This is within the Brisbane Acres zoning district and adjacent to the Central Brisbane R1 zoning district. It is one of 3 lots which were subdivided in 2004. The other 2 homes that were part of this subdivision have since been constructed. Since this home was part of a density transfer within the Brisbane Acres, a design permit is required. The Planning Commission approved a design permit for this site previously in 2006, and this was essentially the same design. However, since no building permit was issued, its permit expired. The Associated with this is an application for grading of approximately 306 cubic yards, and that would be prior to the city engineer review and approval of the detailed grading permit. By way of background, and actually I'm forgetting here, I'll pull some slides up. It's the site. And by way of background, in 2004, a mitigated negative declaration was approved for this project by the Planning Commission, along with 2 and 6 San Diego Court, which were the other parts of the subdivision. There have been no substantial changes since the proposed project, and so that remains in effect. Also in 2004, the Commission approved the tentative parcel map for this 3-lot subdivision. This was subject to approval of a use permit for density transfer from Brisbane Acres Lot 49, so the subdivision, and then lot, and it may be a little bit hard to see. This is the subject site. I'm going to go a little darker even. Oh, sorry. So the subject site, and this is down here is the density transfer site, and so it allowed for a transfer of density from higher habitat value to lower habitat value, and it allows the zoning density to remain overall at 1 to 20,000 square feet or more, but in this case you can approve down to 5,000 square foot lots. As required by the San Bruno Mountain Area Habitat Conservation Plan, the HCP, an operating program for the project was also approved along with the tentative map and the use permit. And finally, in 2006, the Planning Commission approved the design permits for this and the adjoining parcel at the same time, and 6 San Diego has since been constructed. However, the design permit expired for 8 San Diego Court, as I mentioned, and so a new design permit is required. And this is the subject site here, and this is the adjacent site that's been built next to it. To approve a design permit, the Planning Commission must make several findings required by the municipal code, and this application meets all of the required findings. There are currently no findings in the code for the Commission's approval of grading permits. The grading permit application and design permit application essentially goes hand in hand. However, revised grading ordinance is under consideration by City Council, and these draft findings that are included in that ordinance were addressed in the agenda report. General plan regarding, first, on the findings regarding general plan consistency, the proposed development is to be consistent with the general plan, which this is. Specifically, it meets the density requirements through the density transfer and is designed to balance the general plan's policies regarding grading as well as topography. Second, the proposal scale, form, and proportion are to be harmonious, and the materials and colors to complement the project. And the home meets all of the Brisbane Acres development standards as detailed in the project description and the agenda report. The home would be just under 3,600 square feet. This is comparable to the adjacent home at 6 San Diego Court, and the two were designed to be complementary in terms of style and materials and how they would be situated on their lots. It is on a downsloping lot, and due to the topography, the home would appear as 1 story from the street and 3 stories from below. At the rear of the home, it would have balconies to add horizontal form to offset the vertical emphasis of the back of the building. And as stated by the architect in the application materials, the proposed home is designed to reflect the Mission or Tuscan style. Be finished with stucco exterior, similar to 2 and 6 San Diego Court, and with a composite slate-like roof tile. And the concrete retaining walls would be imprinted in a stone block pattern. The third finding is that the orientation and the location of the building and open spaces, other features are to integrate well with each other and maintain a compatible relationship to adjacent development, which this application does. Then the proposed home is to be designed and located to mitigate potential impacts to adjacent land uses. There are no anticipated impacts on adjacent uses, and the conditions of approval from the use permit addresses the site's proximity to the wildland fire hazards. Regarding natural heating and cooling, the project design is to take advantage of natural heating and cooling, which this does. It meets that condition. The home being built into the hillside will provide a thermal mass on the backside, and then on the east side it'll gain morning sun for early heating up of the house in the start of the day. For hillside development, the proposal is to respect the topography. And sorry, I've lost that. And minimize its visual impact and preserve significant public views of the bay, Brisbane Lagoon, San Bruno Mountain State and County Park. This is a generalized finding that's similar in a way to the ridge line, but it is not as specific in requiring story poles and in its detail. And this site is essentially in the trees, and I went out to the site and took some photos, and we could go to a couple of those later if you like, but staff sees this as a non-issue. The ridgeline does run close by this site. It ran through to San Diego Court and then up above this site on the other side of the street into the R1 zone. The site plan is to minimize the effects of traffic on abutting streets. Try to catch up here. The traffic circulation and parking was addressed with the approvals for the original subdivision, which included this home. Next, the proposal is to encourage alternative modes of travel, which this site has, it's on a court with low vehicular traffic, and although it doesn't, the court doesn't include sidewalks that, as part of the subdivision, it's a low traffic area, so pedestrian or bike use was not seen as a conflict with those approvals. The site is to provide open and areas and landscaping to complement the building, and this does. It provides California native trees and shrubs, which are consistent with the area and fits with the HCP and with the wildland interface. Consideration is to be given to avoiding off-site glare from lighting and reflective building materials, which this project would do. Also, a condition is recommended to prohibit exterior lighting being directed upward into the night sky, and no reflective glass or other exterior materials are proposed. And finally, utilities and trash are to be screened, and this project does that with a alcove just off the driveway. And as previously indicated, there are currently no specific findings in the code for the Commission's approval of a grading permit. Again, it goes hand in hand with the design permit. Just an update on the status. There's no date set for the grading permit to be heard by council at this point, so that's out there still. But this project does meet the findings that were included in this ordinance. In closing, staff recommends conditional approval of the design permit DP 313 and grading permit EX 213, the adoption of the resolution containing the findings and conditions of approval.
Okay, so we should open the public hearing regarding 8 San Diego Court.
You want, can we ask a question to the staff before we open up the hearing? Okay, do you have the copy of the previous design permit that was issued for this particular project?
I do. In terms of, do I have a copy to distribute at this point? I do not.
Yeah, because the reason I ask is I wanted to compare between the two as to see what has changed. Because at that time we had the extensive discussion on the whole design permit for that particular project. So I just wanted to come up to the speed and see what has been changed. What are the things that were not in the original design permit that was issued, which are new to this one. And if you don't have that, at least you can explain as to what the changes are between the previous one and this one.
Sure. This
we don't have the pictures of the previous one either, right? I mean, it would probably be in that.
I'm sorry.
We don't have the sketches of the previous design permit either.
I do not have them, although I could provide them.
Okay.
Maybe once, as the applicant is speaking, I can pull up a copy and distribute that to you. But I'll mention briefly, and he may want to elaborate on the changes. But essentially, the house has the same footprint, same position on the lot, same size. On the rear of the house, the decks were rearranged. So before there were decks also, but they were off on the sides here, and they were stacked decks on either side, and this deck is a change, and yeah. So overall, that's the change. That would be the only change that you would see from the outside. And then you'd go interior. There were some changes to the layout, which would really not so much a design issue since it's all interior flow, but the house itself is the structure is the same size, same basic look, except for the decks. And staff's opinion, actually, these are. Not that the previous ones were bad, but these are an improvement on the previous design.
The exterior materials are still the same, or?
Correct.
And the color scheme is probably the same, or?
The applicant can address that. I do not recall on that. I believe so.
Now, the house is located exactly the same spot as before, right?
Correct.
Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Dave, do you have any questions for staff?
No, I have no questions for staff.
I do. These lots were subdivided in 2004, correct?
Correct.
And 2 of the 3 properties were built relative to this subdivision and this Brisbane Acres rezoning and density transfer, correct?
Correct.
So, because this was somewhat convoluted in the way it was drawn out in the first place, was there any pushback from the people in Brisbane relative to this density transfer? Were there any complaints about how this was handled back then relative to this entire project? I don't remember, so I need clarification on this just for my own edification.
In my looking through the files, I did not see a whole lot of pushback. There was a letter in the file from a resident on, it would be a Humboldt address, but it would back on, so it has now double frontage, and there was a concern raised on his part as to just making sure. I think that he had some concerns about traffic up on the court behind.
On Humboldt?
Actually on the new San Diego court.
San Diego court.
Right.
Okay. The other things that are actually have always concerned me as a resident and now a planning commissioner relative to building up on this particular hill, the density transfer was always of concern to me, and I did make my feelings known about that prior to becoming a planning commissioner. But looking at this now, in 2004, a negative declaration relative to CEQA, a mitigated negative declaration, was approved for this project, and it concluded that all environmental impacts were less than significant or will be reduced to less than significant levels by mitigation measures. That is now 10 years old. These findings were brought because of the circumstances 10 years ago. How can we now say that 10 years forward that remains the same? That's my concern. That's one of my concerns, is that we now have a 10-year-old declaration that said, relative to what's significant environmentally on that hill. As you know, I have done exhaustive research regarding the Brisbane Acres relative to Thomas Hill, relative to the properties behind my own home years ago, and I was very much interested in what was going on this hill. So I have concerns that these negative declarations back in 2004 may not be the same now. I may be completely wrong. I'm just expressing my thoughts on this. And based on my conversations relative to other properties in Brisbane Acres with the experts on the mountain, is that things can change and things can change rapidly. One of the items that was brought to me by one of the biologists that was referred to me by San Bruno Mountain Watch was that even though the grading up on Guadalupe Canyon was pretty horrible relative to decimation of the butterfly habitat, that the host plants decided they wanted to grow up there. So how did that happen? Who knows, but it did, and the host plants for the butterflies up there did come back in that area. I'm a little concerned about approving anything without a little bit further review on this particular piece of property 10 years later, since it has not been disturbed, and maybe things have changed, and this is property that's contiguous with the mountain. Maybe I'm completely wrong, but I'm expressing my thought on this. So I would like staff's thought process on this. Ken?
So with regards to the HCP, the county was, as well as the biologist for San Bruno Mountain, Thomas Reed and Associates, they were copied on this application and had no comments. And staff found no changes that would trigger, under state law, going back and opening this up for another initial study. So
this was brought to the governing bodies that that did this in 2004.
That's
and there
correct.
were no changes according to that.
They had no, they responded back and said they had no comments on it, that it was consistent.
Okay.
I think for in future, maybe you should attach those type of things with that. If you do get the written response from them, then it's easier for us to see, yes, it was updated. So I think that should be a part of the attachment.
So if we have a mitigated negative declaration, State Clearinghouse number 200404115, and was approved in 2004, when does that expire?
Environmental documents don't necessarily expire. What you do is, and what staff does in every situation where the project wasn't fully developed, we evaluate the proposal that's before you, and one, you determine if there are any changes to the project. Physically, is it any different than what was environmentally assessed originally? And in this case, that's clearly no. Then the other issue is to look at changed circumstances. Is there anything changed in the environment that would lead you to a different conclusion than was reached that number of years ago? As the senior planner indicated, that was reviewed with the HCP governing bodies, the regulators. They indicated there were no changes in the physical setting that would lead them to a different conclusion than was reached in 2004. So those are really the two factors that you look at, whether or not an environmental document prepared, whether it was last year or 5 years ago or 10 years ago, is still adequate for purposes of this activity.
Okay. My second comment regarding this application is relative, and in all fairness to other applicants who are looking to build in Brisbane, in the Brisbane Acres, there has been exhaustive efforts to see whether these projects are appropriate or not. And since the laws have changed since this project went through, I'm not in the mindset to insist that we put story polls in, as has been suggested, because I think that's extreme and serves the purposes of several people who would like to see that happen. But I do think it might be appropriate to have an artist rendering relative to this particular project and how it affects the ridgeline, because the other properties on San Diego Court, as we have discussed as a planning commission, do significantly impact the views from everywhere in Brisbane of the ridgelines and from all of the bay trails in every which way. So I think if we are going to make it mandatory that other applicants in this area put an artist rendering of what their property looks like relative to the ridgeline, I think we should be asking this applicant to do the same thing. I don't know how we do that, but I'm just making my comment.
The applicant has as you see on the screen, there are these renderings which were provided by him. He's added another one as well, which is on the wall. This is 7 San Diego Court in the foreground, and then you're looking out over a rendering of 6 and 8 San Diego Court across the street in that case. With regards to viewing up from below, I'm not sure if an artist rendering would be a fair evaluation, because really what you see mostly is trees looking from below the site up at the site. So it might be something to direct to the applicant, the architect, and see if he has any further thoughts on that. In terms of the height of the development, it's significantly lower than 2 San Diego Court by about 35 feet overall. So it will because the street rises up to 2 San Diego Court at the end,
Right.
pretty substantially. It will be significantly lower than that site as well.
Okay, thanks. So we should open this to comment from the applicant, correct? Thank you.
Open the public hearing.
Open the public hearing, sorry.
Let's see which one.
Hi. Is this dark enough? As long as I guess you can see me. Chairperson, commissioners, thank you for having me. My name is Jim. I'm the architect representing the owner, Karen. Is this mine, actually? It is mine. Okay, never mind. Sorry. I'm just trying to go back to where everything is. Yeah, Ken's really explained a lot of the materials that I actually helped him. I gave a lot of the materials and he adapted for his presentation. So I don't feel like I have to go over a lot of details, except really, I think what I'll try and do is address your concerns more than anything else, and maybe add a couple of things. Quickly, I just want to point, so you don't strain your neck all the time.
We have it on our screens.
Oh, you do, but I just was going to use the laser pointer.
Oh, okay.
If you look over here, it's hard to see from here. I just wanted to help you understand what I did. I just put up a site plan like the one that's up there before, with the two houses together, the 8 and 6 San Diego Court, just to show the relationship of these pictures, actually. The rendering here that I'll show up there again is the view he was talking about of 7 San Diego Court, with kind of what you call a helicopter view, looking at that and looking across to 8 and 6. That view is basically that way on the site plan, if that makes any sense. This view up here is the back, so I put it back here so you can see it going this way. And then this side is coming down the road from approximately 1100 Humboldt, the one that's in the kitty corner there, coming this way. So I'm trying to explain so you at least don't have to always turn around. But those views are renderings that, some of these renderings were done at separate times, but these two had been done and cleaned up a little bit. I actually put in the real shot of the bay here behind the house, so you understand the view from San Diego Court of the bay behind it. So you can see the trees here. They're actually, this is very close to the real scale, as close as I could get it. Obviously, I didn't get the real shot from here. It's really hard to get a shot of the bay. That's just really hills looking down. And back here you can see 7 San Diego Court up there, from the back, from the rear side. Okay. So those renderings show really the immediate context. I know that's not coming from the lagoon area or farther away, but I do have some shots showing pictures I took of that area. I'll show them in a minute here, but that was meant to really give you the real immediate context. And here, I'll just go, this summary has already been explained, so I'll go past that. Renderings, okay. If you see the map up here, you see it down there already, so this is what I already explained, essentially. 7 San Diego Court, which is really, actually has part of the parcel on Humboldt Road. The entrance is on the San Diego Court. You got 6 San Diego Court, which is a larger, basically these are very similar in style. 6 and 8 are very similar. 6 is actually a little larger, and it's a larger parcel. Then you have 2. And 2 actually, if I recall correctly, because I was involved in all these projects, 2 was actually, had story poles. And that goes back a ways. That was like the initial project actually on this whole thing. These all were combined, as we talked about before, as subdivision. Here's a real shot, kind of a fisheye shot, where I stitched the pictures together. You see 6, you see 2 on the right, and then you see 7 here. And in that back side right there in the very corner is where 8 San Diego Court would go. So it's coming down the hill. And actually beyond that, there's 1122 Humboldt, which is a house that's been there for years, decades actually. That's been there at the same height actually, or maybe a little, almost, probably about equal height or maybe a little higher actually than 8, because 8's only 1 story above, and 1122 is about 2 stories above on the back side there. So let's keep going. Here's a view of 8 San Diego Court if you look down. There's some vegetation still, but I'll be honest with you, I think when the construction was done 6, there was actually some denuding or some excavation that affected the site next door. It's very hard not to see that happen, actually. So there's a road down there, that's Annis Road below. And you can see the trees that are beyond Annis Road that really are going to, as far as I know, there's been some trimming done. And I don't think those trees will ever go away, as far as I know, unless something happens where they're diseased or something. Obviously, I don't see them changing. Then you have the bay to that corner there, and to the left. There's no desire or intention to change any of the trees. We want those to stay, obviously. And if you look over here, you get a view of the San Diego Court looking up. And now this really gives you an idea of the hill, I think. When you're coming up this road, you can see this is real scale. Here's 8 San Diego Court, here's 6, and you can see that's coming down the road, so it's going to be lower. 7 actually sits up, and the garage is the same level as the entry of the house. And the living space of 7 is actually 1 story above the garage. So that gives you an idea of where this house sits relative to the other homes. And here's that picture, the larger version of the rendering. And I could just show you, see, this is actually an in-law. This actually has 2 units. There's an in-law below. This is the living unit, the main unit, main floor. Garage is actually beyond here on this level. There's the entry. So you can get an idea of scale here. And that's really why I showed you this shot. To be honest, I kind of like the architecture, how this turned out a little better, to be honest with you. So, there's the other shot of the rendering of idea of some of the trees, which we want to do the screen as much as we can, but we also still want to maintain some view for the owner. And there's another rendering. This is an older rendering, but this one is still accurate. This obviously doesn't have the picture behind it. But this is the bay behind, as like I showed before. Okay, plans. I think I'll skip the plans because you don't really need to know this at this point, I don't think, unless you want to ask questions. We did change a little bit in the basement. We changed the organization a little bit inside because he wanted a guest room inside, and that didn't change the square footage at all. It gives you an idea of the slope here. And there's the cut for the section. By the way, that 306, that's moving dirt, basically, as far as, so you understand, that includes the cut and fill. And I'm trying to encourage that we try to keep as much of the dirt on site so we don't have to take all of it off. So we can. That's a materials board. Okay, here's the views. This is the part that I'm hoping will help you guys understand or see what I think is the real view from the lagoon that Ken was talking about before. If you look at these shots, unfortunately, my version of Acrobat, I couldn't make the text any larger than you see there, so sorry about that. But you can see that little circle, that ellipse right there? Mm-hmm. This is taken from a camera, a point-and-shoot camera that's not the digital. This is the maximum without going digital on the, like 3 times magnification. This is magnified with digital, so it's a little distorted. But there's where the house would be. Here's 7 behind it. Here's 11122 Humboldt, actually. You can see a little bit of the house there. And then there's 2 right there. So you can see how the trees are involved here. These are the trees we saw from the other view. And this is where, if you're asking me to do a rendering, I'd basically be showing little like, barely, corners of it at best. Basically, the tree almost blocks the whole house from that view. Mm-hmm. If you go a little further, this is another angle. Same issue, but you see more of 2. 2 is the one that's highest up. 7's right about here. 6 is right here. There's 7. There's 11122. And there's 8 somewhere in there, too. And then finally, this view. This is the one that is turning the corner, basically, at the edge of the lagoon. And this really is probably the strongest view of 8 we have. And this is at magnification probably about 7 or 8 digital. So it's still a little distorted in terms of it's not very high res. 2, 8, and that's basically where 6 would be, and then 7's behind there somewhere. So I really do feel like, honestly, I understand your concerns. I actually went to the hearing last time for 8 Thomas just because I want to get a feel what was going on with that project and, what the community's concerns are. And I understand the concern. It's a valid concern, but at the same time, I really do think this is the completion of an original subdivision. It may have come across as being convoluted, but I was involved in all those projects, and I really tried to maintain a style that would work together, that would also work in a context where, in my opinion, with the exception of maybe one house, none of them would really upset the ridgeline. It would be behind trees or in a context that was self-contained. If you look at 1122, which I pointed out before, that house has been around and right next to this subdivision for decades. I don't know how old the house is, probably 40s or 50s when it was built. I know the owner, actually, because I helped on a remodel and an addition for that house. So I'm very aware of the context. I want you to understand that I'm very aware of the concerns, and I just don't see, in this context, how the ridge is being blocked or upset. I mean, because the natural habitat itself is actually is allowing for this to fit in, basically, to where it is on the site. Since this house is the lowest of all of them, I do feel like it also is the least obstructive, the least likely to block any view of the other homes, which I think I've shown. So I'll leave it open to you to ask me more questions, but I don't think I need to necessarily give you more details at this point. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Question?
No.
Dave?
No, good. Clear to me.
Okay, what is your pleasure?
Be it to ask for anybody else wants to speak before the commission, before we close the public hearing.
Good evening. My name is Linda Parker. I live at 301 Harold Road. And first I'd like to say that I'm all for this development. It's going to be a beautiful sight for us coming down Harold to Annis and seeing that lot that has been sitting there without anything for so many years, to have a beautiful home sitting there. So I am all for it. My concern here for this evening is Annis Road is very tight right in through there, and I was just wondering if heavy equipment is being brought in at that point just to get up to do the little bit of excavation. Is there some provision that if there is any damage, like potholes or something, that somebody will be fixing those? I mean, it's already kind of like this when you go on that road. So I just wanted to put out that, if there was any slight damage, who would be responsible for fixing the potholes? That's basically what we're concerned with. But basically, I think it's going to be a great sight for me every time I drive down Annis Road to see a new home. And there is going to be some disruption to our traveling back and forth with while they're doing their excavation, which we anticipate, and we don't have a problem with that. But anyway, I just wanted to put out my concern about just potholes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Linda.
Thank you.
Good question.
Thanks, Linda.
I think the staff should make a note of that so that at the end of the project to make sure that the thing is put back correctly the way it was before.
Yes, and we'll carry that concern forward to the Public Works Director and City Engineer, so as he'll be issuing grading permit.
Do you think you should put it in as a condition here that after the completion, the owner should?
We can do it
Fix the road.
something advisory to the city engineer if you wish.
No, I mean I didn't say that. It's a normal practice to do that, but.
Yeah.
Since the concern was raised, so I think that it may not be a bad idea to put as a condition that after the project is finished, the owner should bring the road back to the condition it was before.
Is Annis going to be the main thoroughfare for the excavation vehicles? Could you come?
Can you come?
At this time, I actually don't know, but I don't think it would be a problem to have that discussion and work out a plan. I was thinking during permit process, we'd probably submit a plan anyways, because usually you do have something for grading at that time. So.
Yeah, he's talking about after the house is completed and you guys
no,
leave.
you're talking about sorry.
After you guys leave, you left all the potholes for them to deal with. So
of course, yeah.
What I'm saying is that
Yeah.
you should put, before the occupancy certificate is issued, make sure that the road is properly.
I would not. Yeah, I think that's perfectly fair. I would expect
Yeah.
that actually. So yeah.
So that's to.
Yeah, of course.
Dave, any questions? Yeah.
No questions.
Okay, for now. Anybody else like to speak?
Ron is here.
Ron Davis, 325 Humboldt. I look out from my house and I see across the hill and I see this development, and I know from being over there that this particular house is going to be lower than all the rest surrounding, and that from my house it doesn't impact the view towards the bay, which has been the problem with the last proposal for Thomas, that really people are complaining about it from one perspective. And so I think this is the least of all the property on that street. It would be nice to finish that street and just go on with what was already approved.
Thank you, Ron. Okay,
Any other comments before we close the public hearing? Come on, Linda.
I'm Linda again. And I just wanted to say that, Brisbane is about the charmingest little town. And it's a European feel to it. And it's just beautiful, and it's nice wherever you go and you look out on any horizon. The homes add to the charm, of this community. So, when you're out on Humboldt, on the I guess up there, or Trinity, one of those roads, looking back at Thomas and all that. There's such charming homes, and it just adds to the, the feel of Brisbane. Plus, it's going to bring in, even at 8 Thomas and 8 San Diego, this is going to bring in more money for the little town of Brisbane, and that's one of the main concerns right now of the city council. So, I think it's a win-win for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the public?
Okay, I make a motion to close the public hearing.
I second that motion
Favor?
to close.
Aye.
Right. Public. Right. Discussion.
Well, I think walking up there, and I've walked up there many times before, but, with the trees there, it's blocking basically the view or the majority of the water view that house has, I think naturally takes care of that issue. I do, however, if I may subjectively comment on the, design, I'm all for harmony, and I think the design is beautiful and it is harmonious in that cul-de-sac. But as a designer too, I also support kind of informal design and asymmetry. And Brisbane is a town of eclectic kind of architecture. So I always encourage designers to look at what you can do in an informal way instead of always a symmetrical or kind of harmony through this symmetrical design. So it's just always a joy to walk through Brisbane and see all the different, architecture and kind of the clashing of, all these kind of crazy styles. But it is, in that, that said, it is a harmonious design, and I definitely support it. And I know my only other concern was just, the drainage issues, and I know that was considered and taken care of with the previous designs. So otherwise, I support it, and happy to see it completed. So, thank you.
Okay, my take on this is this particular, project, like consisting of all these several homes there. It was subject of a lot of discussion a few years back, and at that time, this was one of the first applications that came before us. And the compromising point was that the applicant was willing to spend quite a bit of money to fix the roads. And he put in all those roads to make it safer. And it was quite a bit of an undertaking. So that was one of the main things that triggered us to go ahead and approve this project. As far as the view concern, you know, that was discussed in the other last project, also 8 Thomas Road, and here also some of the people are recommending a story pole and all that. In my opinion, that the way we're looking at this particular Brisbane code, it's like it's saying that it doesn't mean that we should go take our high-powered camera and try to look at the little dot in the sky and say this is going to block. The whole idea was that we didn't want something that big monster thing that anybody walk in can see it. So the lot of analysis that was submitted in the last hearings on 8 Thomas, they were looking for a particular thing based on the story pole, but average person walking on that trail, I don't think that he and not knowing what is being there, probably will not even notice that house was there. And that was the purpose was not to nitpick and look at the little point and say, oh, gee, this is blocking it. Of course, you're going to have powerful cameras and all that. Anything will block. But I don't think the purpose of that particular requirement was that you should take a high-powered camera and start taking the pictures. The idea was the average people who are going through back and forth on that trail, all of a sudden this house is there, not knowing that. These pictures were taken knowing that is the particular spot. But anybody just walking there and not knowing that this house is there, is it going to affect their view? And that thought was really lost in this whole discussion, because the probability of a person walking on that, and mind you that only one point in that 3 miles long trail, that person sees that this house is blocking the view. What are the chances of average person stopping at that particular point and noticing that? Close to zero. Very, very little. So I think that whole concept or the approach we are using to look at this whole requirement doesn't make any sense to me. I think the most representative, of all the pictures that were taken was from Luke. He was looking at the wider picture and see what it's going to look like. I don't think that the proposal was that you should take and really any bicyclist walking by there, and he's going to be looking at this and see, oh, where can I see this? And if he doesn't even know where the house is, how is he going to even find out? So to me, this particular requirement is meaningless. All it is doing is just creating one more layer that doesn't mean anything to me. I mean, maybe others may disagree with me. So, and I think the main emphasis was that we didn't want anybody to build right at the ridge, so that anybody is walking by. Like there's one house, if you go on 101, there's one house that's been built. Anybody can see that house going by there, blocking it. But these homes, they are within the community, spread around all the other homes. And if you're going to bring another one there, do you think it's going to make a difference? It's not going to make any difference, and I think the approach we're using is really wrong. I don't think that we should be taking this high-powered camera and try to do the analysis at what length and what height and all that. It should be a cursory review and see that this house is going to stand out. And that was not done for 8 Thomas, and I think this is what some of the people are trying to do again for this one here, which is not appropriate, in my opinion. So from that point of view, I think I just say that we should discard that whole thing and look at the house itself. And I think Jim has done a pretty good job of designing this particular house, and as far as the gut feeling about why this was done, why we did the density transfer, at that point in 2004, there were reasons for doing that, and that was one of the first proposal came before us, and we had a number of hearings on that, and we all decided that this should be done the way it was proposed. So now the application or the permit has expired. So the question is, should we reopen that whole thing? That they go through the square one again and see why this density transfer or what? And I don't think it will be fair. I think the Planning Commission has already approved, the city has already approved, the council has already is in concurrence with this whole deal at that point. So I'm in a position where I have to make a decision whether to go back and ask the applicant to go back to square one and start justifying the density transfer and all these other studies that were done a number of years ago. Should we do that again? Traffic study to see that this particular house is going to add any more traffic or what? So those type of things, in my opinion, are at this point are not necessary. So that's my comments.
Okay. Dave, anything else?
No, I concur.
So, I'm assuming you would like to make a motion to approve this budget.
Yeah, I can make a motion to approve.
Do you have any comments?
I've made my comments.
Okay.
I have some concerns, and my concerns are relative to contiguous butterfly habitat, which I'm not comfortable with a 10-year-old CEQA negative declaration. I mean, if we were starting this process now, and I understand, and this is my whole issue relative to the Brisbane Acres. I've spoken to all the experts relative to San Bruno Mountain habitat and habitat restoration. I have some concerns relative to the grading, and we're in the process of changing the grading requirements, correct? It's going through City Council at this moment.
There is the ordinance for grading. However, this is consistent with that, the findings of that ordinance.
Okay. So I just have some concerns about this, that, and I don't know how to answer that. Staff, do you have any comments that will help me out here?
Maybe what I can suggest is that, is that impossible? Sorry about my throat. I think I got catch a cold or something. I didn't want to be rude, so anyhow. What may I suggest is it possible, maybe can we suggest that maybe an environmentalist go back and look at it and submit an update report for the habitat? And I don't think that should be a big thing to be big expenditure to the owner, and also that will satisfy the chairperson's concern. Since it is an 80 or 10 years old project, so just to get a surface letter from the Thomas Reed and Associates may not be enough. And knowing the Thomas Reed and Associates, I have some concerns about their letters too. So anyhow, I think my suggestion will be that maybe we should attach that as a requirement that the applicant do one more study. And in my case, when I was doing my project, I was asked to do that, and I submitted 4 different times, 4 different reports on HCP, the habitat conservation plan that we have. I submitted 4 different studies at one time. So I don't think it's very expensive, and I think it will satisfy the concerns that, yes, there is no change now, and that's one way to satisfy the chairperson's concerns.
My concern would be that we're going back unnecessarily when we've already got in writing from the county and from TRA that this is consistent. This is it's a planned parcel. Now that's what the previous applications, both the use permit, which was vested with the first homes that were built, the use permit was for the subdivision, as well as the tentative parcel map, which is also that's vested. So, in terms of the density transfer, that's the city doesn't really have the legal grounds to go back and undo that. So really what would be before the commission is just the design for this lot, and if there was a trigger in there in that design to say, look, this warrants going back and looking at the environmental document all over again and reopening that. But I'm at a loss to see what the
I disagree. I kind of disagree with you. Because the thing is, in 10 years, if you have new standards, suppose the building code came up with a new code, we'd incorporate that into our design. And I want to make sure that this particular project has that. 2014 Uniform Building Code.
Through the chair, the house will be subject to the building code that's in effect when
Yes.
the application is made.
Yes.
There's no review required of the commission. That's by law. So they're not going to impose a 2004 building code on a house application that's being made tomorrow or next year.
That point is very well made. But at the same time, when I was trying to get the application, I was told by the consultant at that time that we had to look at a series of different times, fall, winter, spring, and all that. And then as the time elapsed, I had to redo the study again.
We'll have to do that as well.
And things do change in 10 years, you know. So things do change in 10 years, and unless the Thomas Reed and Associates person came, did he walk through the site at all, or he just write the letter from his office?
I can't speak to what they did.
Those are the things we have to know to make sure that the proper evaluation was done. And just the surface letter is sometimes can mislead to a problem later on down the line.
So
It's for the benefit of the applicant as well as for the city to have the most recent data, in my opinion.
So there's another tool within the ACP rules, and that is the site activity review, which this applicant will have to apply for that before they actually start construction. So there is another pass that has to be made before they do any work on the ground. So when the building permit comes forward, before the grading, right?
Can you explain that, please, Ken?
So the site activity review is a permit for essentially any work in the habitat area, and it goes through the county. It also goes through TRA for review, and it details exactly what's being proposed to be done at that point in time. So before they can start any work on the ground, they will have to comply with that requirement, and it will go back again at that point to the county and to TRA.
Okay, so that is the answer to my concerns, is that, I mean, I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm just, this is contiguous property with San Bruno Mountain. I have concerns about anything we can do to enhance habitat, not destroy habitat. So this particular provision, that if we say, okay, go ahead, then this triggers that provision, and the county comes in and checks exactly what I just said.
Correct.
That the conditions on that property haven't changed. For example, Mission Blue Butterflies moved in, correct? Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
And if they have, then the county has jurisdiction over halting the property, the building of this.
Area.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I think
That satisfies my questions, but I hope you understand my concerns here is that this is not a property that's in the middle of nowhere and surrounded by urban development. This is contiguous with the mountain. This is very, very important that we get this right.
Right.
And even if I vote in favor of this right now, I'm still not comfortable with this because...
But at least he came up with an answer.
Right.
That's what I was trying to get from Ken.
Okay.
That there should be a mechanism to make sure that there are no current issues with that particular environmental concern.
And that's not a
And I
condition
think-
that we... So I'm sorry.
Go ahead. So I'm glad that that process is there, and I think this should also be noted here in terms of the environmental concern, that when in your analysis, maybe you should have put that we will check further when the grading permit is issued. So we will not have the concern raised like we have now. So
Okay.
So we don't have to make that a condition. That is just the procedure, required procedure. Okay.
good, very good.
So the site review is going to take care of that concern. And this is more about the density transfer, right, which... I mean,
No.
No. This
Okay.
is,
No, I mean this application.
is a design
with the
permit to
density.
build it.
Yeah, right. But I mean,
It's one of the last parcel left for
right.
as a
But I mean, the consistency with the density transfer, I mean, that goes back, I mean, you're talking about 10 years ago. It's like the
we
conservation
addressed
plans
that.
back in
That's
the
already
80s
done.
even, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
And there is actually, and this is intended as a reminder more than anything, but there is condition D, which addresses a site activity review, that's required prior
condition
to
D.
issuance of a building
The
permit.
condition D is
Right.
D,
What page is that?
F211.
F211.
Right.
No, it doesn't clearly. You cannot figure this out from.
We can modify that to say prior to grading permit.
Prior
You
to
should,
issuance
you,
of
you should
building
say the
grading
compliance with the CHP. The requirements. So this one just says Department of Parks, but what does that mean? So
F211?
yeah.
How could we reword that?
All add grading, so prior to issuance of grading and building permits,
Like it is in C.
it will be
Yeah.
filed and approved by the San Mateo County Department of Parks following review for consistency with the Habitat Conservation Plan.
Yes, that should be added on.
So F2-11, prior to issuance of building permit
And grading permit.
and grading permit.
Yeah, similar to what it says in C.
Portion D is where we're going to make that
Yeah.
change, correct?
Yeah. I think with that particular change should satisfy your concerns, Karen.
Not necessarily,
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent. I mean,
to a certain extent.
yeah.
Are we good with that, Ken?
Yes.
All right, any other comments?
I don't have any comment.
No
I
other
think-
comments?
I
Okay.
think I make a motion to go ahead and approve this particular project. I think some of the concerns raised was addressed, and some changes were made to the conditions. So,
Before you make that motion, I have one other comment for staff. And this goes back to my concerns relative to landscaping and how we enforce, or I don't think that's the correct word, how we...
Monitor?
That's not the correct word either. It's falling out of my head. When we have, landscaping agreements, how we make sure that they are enforced, how do we deal with that? I mean, this has been my concern in the past.
We haven't.
That's our apologies. And I think Commissioner Cunningham had brought that up before, and we said we would do some research in terms of a standard landscape maintenance agreement in terms of
Right.
what vehicle the city has to then require enforcement or to enforce that. We haven't had the opportunity to do that research. You apologize. We'll come back in January at our next meeting with some sort of update on that. So we'll note it and make sure it's agendized for next meeting.
Right, but I think it needs to somehow be included in this application as well, is that, we've had projects in the past, and I brought them up on several occasions, where we've had landscaping agreements that have been summarily ignored, and excuse me, I'm not saying you would, but the projects have ended up being completely ugly with all this dead landscaping around it. I don't want to see that again.
It's not at the agreement itself doesn't.
They don't see the agreements, so. I mean, basically, the condition is, show them what the condition says, and then we can work on some wording. We're just looking up the condition.
Thanks.
You know what? This was done. So there's already an agreement.
Well,
This was completed.
yeah, we can just point out that condition.
Yeah. So also on page F211, there's a condition A, and this is a condition that actually was already completed because they had started the process before, but then it was halted. So they've actually already entered into a landscape maintenance agreement. Look at the city attorney and see what.
Yeah, I mean, we're still fundamental. So really, two parts of this. One is your concern that there's a vehicle to require enforcement and ongoing. I mean, it already exists in the condition as worded.
Okay.
I think the question you're asking at is, which I don't have in front of me, is
What is that?
what is the tool to enforce that?
Right.
And so maybe that's more informational. I'm glad to bring that informationally back to the commission, but we're not in a position here to come up with a legal mechanism. I mean, that's the city attorney's call. So,
Okay.
we already have the condition in here to require its ongoing maintenance, but I'll bring that back in terms of what is the actual vehicle if we have to do that. So just for the commission is aware of that.
Okay, thanks, John. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I make a motion to approve design permit DP-3-13 / grading permit EX-2-13.
Good. I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have item G and items initiated by staff.
Through the chair, if you might want to mention the appeal period.
process.
Sorry.
Appeal period.
Thank you. Let me read this.
The back, yeah.
Appeals process. Anybody may appeal the action of the Planning Commission to the City Council not later than 15 calendar days, 10 calendar days for subdivision applications after the Commission's action. An application form and fee is required to make a formal appeal. For additional information, please contact the Community Development Director 415-508-2120. Moving on to item G, items initiated by staff.
Not initiated by staff, but just informationally, the 8 Thomas appeal is tentatively set for, I believe it's Tuesday, January 21st. That's the tentative hearing date for that appeal. So,
Tuesday, January 21st?
yes.
Okay.
Anything else from staff?
No.
Item H, any items initiated by the Commission?
Well, I'd like to find out the status of the environmental impact report on our big project. All of a sudden, we're silent now.
Apologize. The council extended the comment deadline to January 24th of 2014. So,
Yep.
until such time as the comment period's closed, we won't be able to, and the consultant won't be able to work on the preparing the final EIR. So I don't have a schedule yet in terms of when that document might be coming forward to the commission. It depends on the scope and the extent of the comments that are submitted, and obviously we're not anywhere near having the full scope of the comments.
Did you get a lot of written comments, or
Not, given that the deadline's been extended, it's not uncommon for most of the comments come within 10 days or a week of the close of the comment period. So we have not received a substantial number of comments at this point.
Okay. Other than that, I wish all of you happy holidays. Is it? I think it's politically not correct to say Merry Christmas, I guess, or Happy Hanukkah. But happy holidays to everyone, and hopefully you all will have a good holidays, and don't eat too much because we need to control our bellies, and and hopefully we'll be all safe and good next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Dave?
Yes. Happy holidays.
Any subcommittee?
No, we had another sustainability committee meeting scheduled for later in December. I think it's next week, but that's it. We don't have an update for that. And I think, Ken, you sent an email out regarding the green building ordinance. We're going to wait till January till we get some more information.
There are several balls in the air with regards to the statewide rules, as well as LEED and Build It Green.
Yeah, lots of changes on the green side. So we'll see how that settles, and then we can make some get back together and be more productive.
Right.
Yeah.
Also, last meeting I mentioned about the Mountain View green building requirements starting 2014, and I forgot to give you guys the copies of that. So I will make sure that I send it to you. Okay.
Any other comments?
Okay, then we take a motion to, and I think we are canceling the next meeting, so.
I was going to say that.
Yeah, so, go ahead.
Any other comments? We'll adjourn this meeting, and I just want to let everybody know we make a motion to adjourn to the regular meeting of January 9th, 2014, as we are canceling the regular meeting of December 26th.
I second.
Yes?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Ken.